Hoops Hype, Michael Scotto, friend of the show. Going to try to get him on very soon here to discuss what came out in this latest piece. The Kings, here's the quote, the Kings have expressed a desire to acquire a first-round pick in the 2025 NBA draft, league sources told Hoops Hype. Amid those conversations, Sacramento has gauged the trade market on guards Malik Monk and Devin Carter, sources said. Goes on to talk about Malik Monk and what he did this past season, and then goes on to talk about Devin Carter. He did say this note about Devin Carter, and, Michael Scotto, very plugged in, especially in New York. Carter, Sacramento's number 13 pick in 2024, battled injuries and appeared in 36 games. The Kings most notably held Carter out of trade talks for the Brooklyn Nets forward Cam Johnson during the season, league sources told Hoops Hype. So that is interesting stuff. To go from holding Devin Carter out, and again, this is what happens when you drive the car off the lot, from holding Devin Carter out of Cam Johnson conversations to now gauging the trade market on Devin Carter, life comes at you fast. And some of these decisions, and again, all of this is very vague, right? Hey, I'm just gauging the interest. That doesn't mean we're shopping per se, but just gauging the interest in order to try to get into the first round. What it tells me about Devin Carter is they're not sure what they have. And number one, Scott Perry has no connection to any of these dudes. He didn't draft Devin Carter. He wasn't there for the Malik Monk kind of ascension and the reboot of Malik Monk's career. He wasn't there for none of that. He's just trying to make the team better. So they don't know what they have in Devin Carter. It tells me two things. They don't know what they have in Devin Carter. And if Scott Perry isn't able to pick his own head coach and do some of the things that GMs typically get to do, can I at least get a draft pick? Right? That is the first thing. I would like a draft pick. What it also tells me, and we've discussed this before, is they may or may not feel like they've seen the best of Malik Monk. You hit that, not to say he couldn't do what he did again, but hey, we know where Malik Monk is. We know Malik Monk is a little under 20 points per game. His shooting can be streaky, but he is a pretty good three-point shooter, great in the two-man game. We know what he is, and we're willing to see if maybe a number 20, an early 20 pick, a late teen pick, a late 20 pick, we're willing to see if that could be better than ultimately what we think Malik Monk is going to be when it's all said and done. We're pretty close here to Malik Monk's ceiling. That's what those two things are telling me. So that just came out 26 minutes ago. Michael Scotto dropped that. Obviously, there's a lot about Kevin Durant, things of that nature, and what's next for those teams that missed out. But again, we can spend all this time talking about Domantas Sabonis, and here it goes as well. As previously reported back in early June, rival NBA executives are also monitoring the trio of Domantas Sabonis, Zach LaVine, and DeMar DeRozan, with the belief that Sacramento will explore the possibility of trading at least one of those players either this offseason or before the trade deadline in February. So I think we all agree with that. That's probably going to be the case. So Sacramento just has to make a decision. They have some options. Obviously, we don't know who's getting calls on what, but they're getting calls. They're making calls. And it's funny. It's almost like they're having two different conversations. One conversation is for that trio, who's open for that trio, which it could be combined, right? We talked about that with the Heat, But one conversation is happening with that trio. Is anybody trying to pay a pretty penny here and see what they can do with highly productive players that are going to make big moves? The other conversation is kind of a lesser conversation with the Malik Monks, the Devin Carters. I would assume there's some version of packaging that, right? As far as Devin Carter, you're not just going to do Devin Carter for a late 20s. I don't think he's got that much value right now.
Oh, I think he would probably do
maybe not late 20s, but I would say
mid-teens, probably not.
Yeah, you could, and if it's not going to be the Heat, right?
Yeah,
the Heat are at 20.
I guess we'd have to go through the teams. Brooklyn's got like 19. Maybe Brooklyn would give up 19 or something.
But why?
At that point, just pick your own guy, right?
Right.
I mean, Devin Carter was supposed to be a top 5 pick, but everyone says last year's draft was just terrible.
Yeah, Basuda.
Yeah, so
it was supposed to be.
Khalil Ware ended up being pretty good. Jeremy McCain looks like he's going to be pretty good.
And real quick on that, I do find it kind of fascinating. This goes back to the ceiling conversation because I do find it fascinating. And the Heat, again, I just don't think they know what they're doing. But to make Khalil Ware untouchable after one season, I know you're in a tough spot, but it is funny to me how quickly teams make players untouchable. It's a little quick for me.
The part of it, too, is that drafting is such an imprecise science that it's so hard to actually kind of get these values right. Like, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander got traded after 1 year, and yes, granted, it was a much bigger trade, but, like, nobody knew what Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was in 2019. I just bring up that example to say, like, how silly would you feel if you're the team that picked Devin Carter or you're the team that picked Dalton Connect like the Lakers did, and all of a sudden you gave that player away before they ever became the thing that everyone's trying to get in the draft, which is a mid-first round pick that turns into a legitimate contributor.
But that's why if you're going to do that, you better be doing it for a full-on purpose, right? And the Kings making that move for Sabonis, them doing that when nobody was sitting there saying, we had the conversation, what was worse, the Paul George trade for SGA or the Tyrese Halliburton trade for Domantas Sabonis. We could talk about what was actually worse, or we could talk about the spirit of what was worse, yes, right? Because trading Tyrese Halliburton just to break a drought, and I guess the Kings at that time thought that they were going to be good for a really long time, but nobody thought that they were going to be perennial contenders. They did.
In 2023, you could have convinced some people.
There were a lot of question marks on Sabonis going into it. So even though we could probably say the Clippers trade was worse simply because SGA won the whole thing, SGA is going to be an MVP for a very long time, but the Clippers made a move to they were unequivocally trying to win the whole thing. So I actually have less of a problem with and SGA, they're probably pretty close between SGA and Tyrese as far as the flashes. I think Tyrese had maybe shown more flashes than SGA at the time of the trade.
Yeah.
But I have more of an issue. You could say that the Clippers trade ended up being worse, but their reasoning was better than the Kings' reasoning.
Right, because the Clippers' reasoning for making the trade and giving up all the picks they did, which in hindsight, if you follow the picks, I think one of them turned into Jalen Williams and one of them turned into Case and Wallace, and everything else hasn't really done anything. But the reason for giving up SGA and the picks was not just to get Paul George, it was to get Paul George and sign Kawhi Leonard.
Yes.
At the time, reigning finals MVP and maybe best player in the sport, Kawhi Leonard. So if you make it Paul George and Kawhi Leonard for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jalen Williams, you'd rather take Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jalen Williams now, but the Clippers had 5 years of being a legitimate championship contender. One of those blown up because Kawhi's knee tore, but they had 5 years where they were legitimately in the championship conversation, which, yeah, they didn't win it, but I don't think they really regret it in the same way because they were awesome for 5 years with Kawhi and Paul George.
Right. And being in LA, you're going to be okay. That's the other part of it, too. We missed out on SGA. Even if you're the Clippers, you got Steve Ballmer, the most money in the world, as far as NBA standards are concerned, we'll be okay. When we return, one more hour.